Wholesaling is another business. Fix and flip is another business. You are making money today, but you are hungry tomorrow. When you sell a property, you now have to start the cycle all over again. When you buy and hold, you are creating long-term wealth. Wealth is not created with dollars, it is created with white paper. And for the moment, I see myself as being in another business. I talk to my mentor, I explain it to him, and my mentor tells me, Alex, wholesaling is another business. Fix and flip is another business. You are making money today, but you are hungry tomorrow. When you sell a property, you now have to start the cycle all over again. When you buy and hold, you are creating long-term wealth. Wealth is not created with dollars, it is created with white paper. The white paper refers to the assets that the properties hold. So, in the long term, that is where the real business lies.
Why does the value increase?
The value goes up, the mortgage balance goes down, because you are making a payment. Notice that you are creating a supermarket in your favor. When you make a payment, the mortgage balance decreases. The house appreciates and creates equity in your favor. Additionally, you have the appreciation tax. In fact, if you are an engineer, you probably have a high salary and likely pay high taxes. You buy properties. Get yourself a real estate accountant and you will continue with your work paying zero in income.
What is it that I also bring him the money for?
Who invests in real estate? Who is already starting? This does not sound interesting. What has it told you? And in addition, it is providing you with stability at home. What you need to do is diversify that, create long-term wealth, and not pay taxes to the government either on sales or on what you receive from your job.
I told him, send me the contract, and if you keep the tower hanging as long as it is also profitable, then if they sell it, it's no big deal. It generates profit for you.
Look at the problem you will have if you sell it. If you sell it, there will be capital gains on the income you already receive as an engineer. Then your tax return keeps increasing.
If you keep it, you create long-term wealth. But again, you will have to deal with the cost of irrigation and the tax of mitigation in order not to pay taxes either for the license of your work life or for the LVC, which could be due to your job.
What is the money of your life? If you want to win, you have to go with the money. If you are with the money, it will come out of the search for the slogan, but no, yes. And they don't feel uncomfortable? Over the past 18 years, I have changed accountants more than 9 times. They are not bad, but there are levels. When I started my business, I had an accountant at my level. As I grow, they don't grow with me because they are attending to many clients, and eventually, they no longer adapt to my level, to the new level where I am. I have to find an accountant at my new level, and I keep scaling up while they stay behind. I look for another one, and that's how I've continued, and I have reached the 9th, and it's natural. It happens. But it opens my understanding and allows me to grasp several things. One, that there are different people at different professional levels, and that having a license or a title as a real estate accountant does not make one an expert in all areas. And number 2, to the extent that he does not grow, there are people who will not grow, and that includes the accountant, the lawyer, any employee you have. They will stay there. You have to keep growing. And hey, it would be a blessing for them to grow with you, but if they don't grow, I'm sorry, but you're holding me back. I need someone who will not just tolerate me, but who will push me and take me to new homes. Total. So, that's where you come in. Count it out there. I'm sorry, another one is coming. To see how you're doing with your businesses or what it is that... Look, I studied international economics and I also studied international investments. I like numbers. I know about numbers. But I approach it from a macro perspective rather than a micro one. In other words, I don't get involved in adding up every day. What do I mean by this? I know how my number is from A to Z, and I know where every dollar I invest, pay, and so on is going. To be honest and answer your question, my wife is the one who is with them day to day, but it might be once a month, maybe once every 2 months. But I would say that once a quarter, I am looking at the complete macro view of all my businesses, all my companies, and all the properties in my country. And I start to play with it. I begin, okay, with this one that lowers the expenses, with that one that raises the budget, I start to play with it.
And what exactly are you to have, perhaps the invoices and all that?
Do you use QuickBooks or just a basic program? I'm web. For everyone, well, in my business, I use QuickBooks for real estate. I use Dwarf Dollars because the platform has an accounting system very similar to Facebook, but it also has a front end for tenants where They can access a portal for rent. It has everything a tenant needs. They can create a ticket if the toilet breaks, and they create a ticket there. It has all that communication, and it's very easy. It's easier for the tenant, with very few properties of their own. I have been migrating many of the properties to a property manager called Hemblane, spelled Hemlane, and they are a national property manager with a very similar platform. So, the difference is that in the door loop, if you create a ticket because the toilet is damaged, you have to call the handyman. In the case of Hemblin, they have a very similar platform, but if the toilet gets damaged, they are the ones who find the handyman and send him over. And you set it up like a treasure. In my case, I set it at $200. What does that mean? It means that for any minor repair under $200, they execute it immediately.
If it's $200 or more, they look for 3 quotes, send them to me, and I decide who I'm going to choose to repair the property. And for the rentals and all that, since you have so many properties, you have your own company of what do you call those people? I don't know how to name it. The people who connect the money. I mean, like a property manager. Yes. Look, I have my properties where I am the sole owner, and there I use Emble.
And for the properties where I am a partner with others, we actually have local property managers. For example, I have a syndicate in Atlanta with 170 apartments. There, in fact, we made it more strategic. The property manager and the general contractor are owners or have ownership in the EDC, which is better because they will have the same interest that we, the owners, have. So instead of paying a fee, I give you ownership so you feel like you are part of the business and you will give your best for the business. We made it a bit more strategic in that case, and it is a large acquisition of $20 million, which means we had to be a bit more strategic. At that level, when you raise $11 million from investors, you don't want to find yourself in a tight spot. So we decided, you know what? We are going to do it strategically. We are going to give them ownership so they feel like owners. And it's not just a feeling, they are owners and they cover the maximum. I have another syndicate in Atlanta. There are 30 apartments there. We have a property manager, but I have Bulls Underground. I have 3 people who are also partners in the deal. They are in Atlanta. They are always keeping an eye on the property, monitoring the property managers, and they are owners. When did you locate the owner?
Doesn't it often happen? What exactly was the point of when exactly?
There would be 2 points. One, I felt stuck because everything came to capital, and now how do I continue? And then suddenly I say, well, I have no way to continue unless I start raising funds. Well, back then, I didn't understand what the concept of private capital was. There were many things I didn't understand. That was one of them, and it was mentally affecting me, you know. I wanted to move forward, but I couldn't. And I remember talking to a friend of mine, Puerto Rican, he is in Puerto Rico, and he tells me I have 16 doors. And I ask him, how's it going? How are you doing for the next one? And he tells me, I feel stuck or not. I have run out of capital. The same concept, right? And you have to see something else. I get invited to a multifamily event in Dallas for one of the big players here in the United States. His name is Brad Sombrow, and I go to this event and 2 things happen here. I see a new world, completely different from what is residential. Perhaps what you saw yesterday when I presented to you what multifamily is. That is a totally different world, isn't it? And another thing I saw is that it was a similar event to the one the other day, and they are talking about what? Profit and loss statement, balance sheet statement, cash flow, budgeting, employee. I was saying, wait, this is the language I speak with my accountants in my businesses. And I understood that multifamily is a business. The property is the instrument behind the business. In other words, when you buy a restaurant, the restaurant is the business, but the tool that comes behind it is the meat, the food that you are selling to produce cash. Multifamily is the same. Multifamily is the building. It is the tool to produce cash in that business. So what happens? I said, wait, perfect. I am buying properties, which is one of the things I am passionate about in the business world. And I said, this is a hybrid. And immediately I joined a syndicate group. And
In your territory, do you have insurance companies specifically for all the departments you have? Or do you have different insurances depending on the state? There are also some unions. A union is a company. Like respecting the role of urban confinement, the work of the accountant, you must also respect the role of
Plano is the one who will be in charge of executing the deal. Plano is the one who will raise capital. And of course, a measurable respect, perhaps a respect of honor. As colleagues, we will refer to him. But when I say measurable, I mean that obviously if Plano does not do its job, just like a company would remove someone, we have the power to let them go and bring in a new person. But did I already have it? Because at the end of the day, it's not about us, it's about the investors who invested in this deal. They bought shares. I say shares in quotes because they are called units, but ultimately they bought shares of the deal. They are partners, and it is often structured as 80-20 or 70-30. I prefer to structure it as 70-30. What does that mean? It means that we own 30% of the building. 70% of those who invested capital are owners of the building, so they have the majority. They do not make decisions. We make the decisions, but they have the majority of honors. Therefore, we need to protect their interests. Well, the money has been transferred, and in the end, in business, it's about the deal. That's it. If you invest $100,000 with me and in a year I return $200,000 to you, when I have another deal, what are you going to want? Let's do another one. You invest 200, I give you 400. Okay. And when is the next one? Now you invest 400 and I give you 800. And when you come to see it, that's the business. Now if you invest 100 and at some point, oh, the deal went wrong, I failed. Not only do you lose trust in me, but you also lose trust in any deal from any other operator. And it costs you. Trust can always be regained, but it is very, similar to the issue of infidelity. When one partner is unfaithful to the other, it doesn't mean that all men will be unfaithful or all women will be unfaithful, but it is difficult to regain trust and there is a healing process. Here it is the same. And as operators, we must do our utmost to prevent something like this from happening. So I need to be very sure that I am ready to operate a deal. You have to show the investors the numbers, and they mention that weekly calls are made, a weekly email is sent from your dad, and every Saturday a call is held where live discussions take place about the numbers. This is done by the investor relations person. There is a person who is in charge of investor relations, responsible for sending emails, preparing the emails, and doing the Zoom calls every Saturday or on the day one chooses, right? And meet with the investors. Look, let's go. We already fixed this. We already fixed here. Let's go here. Let's go here. The whole complete process.
A process of symbolism.
Yes, in a syndicate, I have raised capital, for example, for a small deal. I have a deal with an angel, for example, for 8 apartments. But I didn't form a syndicate in this sense. We needed $150,000, and one person brought 50, while another brought 100,000. What we did was create a WhatsApp group, and within that group, we posted the photos, showed them to the members, and they are, for example, something very basic, right? Yes, that I have debt. For example, no. Here, for example, I am the contractor sending photos, and what happens is that those who invested with us, they are in the group and don't say anything. But they are seeing all the progress. The other day, one of them called me about another personal matter and said, "Hey, I like the photos. I like how the apartment is turning out." They are motivated because they invested capital and know that the process is underway. Therefore, communication is key.
Already? A real estate decision? 2008, what strategy?
Look, there are 2 things I don't like for... Do you all know what the debt-to-income ratio is? The debt-to-income ratio, or the ratio of debt to income, is a metric banks consider when you apply for, and not the bank we are talking about in commercial terms, but the bank you go to when you are applying for a car, a residence, or a personal loan. What does the bank do? The bank tells you, I want to see the income you generate, right? And the bank does not like to see that you have more than 30% in debt compared to the income you receive. And that is one of the qualifications that banks use. With that in mind, one of the things I adapted to, and this is just me with myself because no one is pushing me, this is just me with myself, I do not want to exceed my debt-to-income ratio of 40%. One of the things that happened in 2008 is that many people were leveraging 90, 100, and even 110%. Those who were here, I don't know if you remember, but banks were giving loans at 110%. The house cost $200,000 and they lent you $220,000, so you would arrive at the closing with a check in hand. But that is a very big problem because it poses a huge risk for the bank. Because if you stop paying for the house, you owe the bank more than the house is worth. So, one of the things I am protecting myself from is that I try, for example, now when I go to buy a house and I plan to keep it, I immediately calculate, okay, my debt-to-income ratio is currently at 33%. If I buy the house, I will have a mortgage of $1,800 and I will rent it for $2,500. Okay, how would that work out for me? I don't exceed 40%, I buy it. And of course, that's a moment when the atmosphere is a bit tense. There are many things happening, inflation, elections, interest rates. So well, one has to be careful in that aspect. One of the ways I take care of myself, the other go with the people. Properties will always increase in value. They seek the history of all the crises that have occurred in this country. Crises that have nothing to do with real estate. And properties have always increased, but the one I liked the most was 2008, a crisis caused by real estate. You might say, the one in 29 had nothing to do with it, that's why we recovered. No, 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 no. And we are not going to recover from this because it has to do with the real estate market. Do you know what happened? We recovered. History tells you that real estate will always excel through any crisis. So don't over-leverage yourself, because if something like that happens, you will have the financial power to sustain yourself for 4 or 5 years while the properties recover and increase in value.
What do you think about fix and flip given the current market conditions with the insecurity, as the president mentioned and all that? What advice would you give regarding that?
Julio is doing spectacularly well and he is making a lot of deals. Is Julio special? No. He is in Charlotte, and the market in Charlotte is extremely hot. He taught me, for example, that he would finish a property, list it, and within 9 days, 8 days, it would be put under contract. I was recently in Atlanta looking at one of the properties we are discussing now, which I plan to keep, but I did consider selling it, right? And I asked the realtor, let me see the average days on market, which is the average time a property stays on the market. 9 days. So, there are markets that are hot, and there are markets that are slow. So the idea is to study which market you want to target. A good exercise is to call Rialto and ask what the average days on market are in this city. If you see that they are, because right there in Atlanta there were other cities where we saw properties that we walked through, where the average days on market is 60 days, and where I bought it is 9 days. The difference is very marked. So I decided to buy in that one, and noticed that the spread was bigger. I saw a property that I was buying, meaning the opportunity to buy it for $170,000 required about $70,000 in repairs. We are talking about 170, 240, right? And I could sell it for almost 4, like around 380 more or less. But the average days on market was 60 days. The one I am buying, I bought for 185. It requires about 30,000 in repairs, and I can sell it for 289, 300. The profit is lower, but I feel more secure because the average days on market in the city is 9 days. So I prefer to earn less and have less risk than to be a little greedier, to have a bit more avarice to make more money and expose myself to 60 days elections, inflation, a series of things that really put me in a situation.
And you have to be paying month by month.
And the interests of a harmonist are unique interests.
So you have to pay them each month by month.
So the longer you take, the more it costs you and the more the profit gets absorbed. Well, here.
Yes, man. Here on the second side. Well, that's fine. One question. When the first time, for example, my daughter is 18 years old, and if I want to buy some apartments, I've told you, if I put her as a first-time buyer, which is 3%, right? When it's the first time she's supposed to live there, do you think that one can do that as a backup?
For her to buy completely, look at one of the goals I have. I want to build my goal for 2025, which is to construct a hotel in Puerto Rico. One day, while talking to my daughter, I don't remember how the conversation went, and she said, "Daddy, I want to design it." I was a bit surprised because she's already 15 years old, but that was last year when she was 15. I asked her, "Well, how do you plan to design it?" She replied, "Give me a chance. I'm going to start looking for ideas on TikTok and Instagram." Hey, she created an impressive PowerPoint. It impressed me so much that I said to her, "You know what? If we buy or when we buy the hotel, I will call her. Her name is Christina. We nicknamed her Nina's. I told you we are going to call it Nina's Boutique Hotel, and I am going to give you ownership. Why? Because you were part of the design of that hotel. It may not be a large percentage, maybe 10%, but just imagine everything that comes with that. They at the university and being able to have the self-esteem to say I am the owner or co-owner of a hotel in Puerto Rico. I designed the hotel in Puerto Rico. The experience she will gain from that will take her to much greater levels. So the answer is yes, let's give ownership to our children, even if they don't know what they're doing, but involve them in something. Hey, you painted the wall, buddy. I'm going to give you ownership.
But what I was just going to ask you is whether or not you think that banks will lend you the money if you put her first.
No, indeed, nothing happens. The bank always lends money to all owners who have 20% or more in the business.
What I understand The first pre-buy is 3%. If it's the first time of
No, in fact, you can ask any bank and you will see whenever you apply for a loan, they will tell you, give me the operating agreement of the EDS. I want to see who has ownership of more than 20%. Oh, right. So, if there are two partners with 20% each, they are going to analyze the two partners. Okay.
Alex, a general question that my son asked me. He's 9 years old. What would you respond? He came to me and said, and it shook me up, and he said, "Hey Dad, how do I make money? We can buy Gatorade if you sell it or something like that," thinking about the cat, but no. I said, well, it's not that strange. We buy a product, TikTok, YouTuber, everything I saw. But then I said, no, I have to deal with this. And that's why I'm here, right? Besides that, what would you say to a 9-year-old who tells you, I left you money, your money, a little money?
I believe it's a delicate topic, right? But we, as adults, can understand the path, not the correct one, because there is no correct path, but perhaps the easiest path, right? Let me tell you, because I believe that any business can generate income. For example, I am an entrepreneur, and after a conversation with my wife, I told her, I don't know if you have noticed, but in 2 years, the company is already 18 years old. I told her that in 2 years, we have built greater wealth from the real estate side than from the company side, which has taken us 18 years. Much more sacrifice, sleepless nights, tears, moments of laughter, employees who come and go, employees that you have to fire. Firing an employee is uncomfortable. And when an employee is indeed good and resigns, it is also uncomfortable. So I told him, and that leads you to understand that the easiest way to get from one point to another is through a straight line. And of course, maybe in my company I reached this point. It took me 18 years, but I got there. And with the Rio 6, I got there faster in 2 years. What am I getting at? In response to your question, it might be difficult to explain that to them because they are just little kids. And it's a fine line because I believe that if you keep saying real estate, real estate, real estate, real estate, they will probably say, no, Dad, I don't want real estate anymore. I want to start an Amazon business. I want to be a YouTuber. And I believe that you really have to let it go. And I'm going to tell you something. My daughter at 16 years old the other day told me, Daddy, I want to work at Costco. My eyes opened like this. I tell him, but how is that? I can give you a job in my technology company or in real estate. And she was telling me, no. And I realized that I didn't understand. Recently, I was sharing time with Jerry Norton at the hotel in Puerto Rico, and I made the comment, and he said to me, well, I have 10 children, and I have one who runs the entire hotel for me. I have another one who runs another business for me, but I have some who have wanted to go work for someone else, in a supermarket or in a restaurant. You know what? I let them. After a couple of months, they come back. Dad, you were right. This is really a mistake. Earning $10 or $12 an hour versus working for my dad where I have more flexibility, I learn, and so on. So I think it's a matter of giving them the freedom to stumble on their own. And while they stumble, you keep moving on the other side, setting an example for them. Because of course, if I don't set the example, nothing happens. But if I do set the example when they stumble, they say, oh, I saw my dad doing this. I think there's something better that they haven't understood. So I believe it's about setting the example and giving them the freedom to stumble.